Good morning and good evening. Welcome to the 7th in USINPAC series of conference calls on the 2014 Indian elections, culminating in less than 2 weeks. My name is John, and I'll be your moderator for this conference call. With such a large audience, we hope you understand that we cannot let everyone ask questions, which is why all of our attendees are muted. Everyone has received instructions as to how to submit questions, and we thank those who have contributed. Those joining via WebEx will see a Q&A tab to be able to submit questions to our panelists and experts. We'll be monitoring all these question portals during the call. Now, to start this special expert series conference call, I'd like to introduce the chairman of USINPAC, Mr. Sanjay Puri. Sanjay?
Thanks, John. It's a real pleasure to be here in the morning or evening in India. And this is week 7 of our exercise in bringing the Indian elections as close as home to Indian Americans, to members of Congress, and people around the world who can't actually be there for what is really amazing exercise in democracy. And today we have 2 fantastic experts who are going to talk about their perspectives and also give you a chance to have some Q&A. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Ravinder Sachdev, who's also the head of our India operations. Ravinder.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Once again, welcome to our guests who logged into this conference call, and welcome to our 2 eminent speakers. Each speaker will be spending about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll have a wrap-up with both the speakers. The first speaker that we'll have today is Mr. Jay Mrug. Jay has over 18 years of experience in researching Indian elections and number crunching regarding elections. He has covered 5 Lok Sabha polls and over 100 assembly elections in India. So I think he comes with a very critical background for us to help understand how and where the election trends are going. Without ado, I'll invite Mr. Mrug to make his opening remarks in about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we shall get into the Q&A. And I request all our guests and callers to please keep on sending us your questions so that we can put them to the experts and you can get the benefit of their views and perspectives. Jay, please.
Yeah. Good morning, friends, and a pleasant evening to who is, joining from India. I think these elections, 2014 elections in India, are a landmark, and they are unique from 3 perspectives. First is the deployment of technology. For the first time, we have seen, 3D holograms. We've seen reach out through the social media. We have seen a lot of email, internet, telephony campaign. In fact, a very interesting example is, the Aam Aadmi Party, which has actually, put in a toll-free number in place. So all those, who wish to maybe, campaign in some key constituencies remotely, they can make a commitment. They would make 100 phone calls a day or, 50 phone calls a day, and they can access those toll-free numbers and call people in those respective voters in those respective constituencies and try and campaign amongst those voters. So I think this is a landmark, and this is the first in Indian elections, such a rapid deployment of technology. I think other first in the Indian elections is branding. I would love to look at it from a business perspective. Never before have Indian elections been fought as gubernatorially as this one, as presidentially as this one. And there has been extensive branding that has gone in from both the sides, be it the UPA or the NDA, in terms of, what they represent, what vision they stand for, what developmental agenda they have, and even about the basic themes of governance, So I think we've seen excessive branding. I use the term excessive, after a lot of thought, because perhaps never before has the Indian voter been subject to so much of developed content. There has been raw content floating around during the elections in terms of mundane and local slogans, but so much of developed and processed content has not been seen before in the election. The third, which I think again is unique, is extensive mobilization and coverage. I mean, be it the contest in Varanasi, be it the contest in Amethi, or even the sort of electoral mobilization that each political party has put in, across various states, has been unparalleled in history. And we've not seen volunteers traveling, crisscrossing the country just for the sake of the party and saying, you know what, I've got to cover this constituency properly. let's go, let's ensure everybody is there, let everybody have a laptop, let's do a booth-wise strategy, let's have all the database in place. So in a way, these are the first data-intensive elections in India, where a sort of science is thought to be made out of the data that's available, and then, elections are thought to be planned. So I think technology, the mobilization around data as a science, and a lot of branding and PR, these three characteristics make this election unique, and perhaps the first one of its kind in India. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for those opening remarks, Jay. In fact, we have a bunch of questions which are already there for you, but I'm getting one interesting question which I'll kind of pick out of the queue. The question is, does the Priyanka factor matter, or is it a question of too little, too late, a day and a dollar short kind of a thing?
I would agree that it's a too little, too late, case. Perhaps she could have been brought in earlier by the Congress party. But it certainly matters because there are two things she strongly invokes. First is the legacy. People are able to connect, her persona, her body language, her gestures to that of Indira Gandhi. So she invokes a legacy. The second thing is she has not chosen to battle the opponent theme for theme. So like, for example, if the opponent says development and the Congress party says Har Haath Shakti, Har Haath Taraqi, which roughly translates to, progress for every hand, empower every hand. She's not chosen to take the opponent theme by theme. She has chosen to take the opponent head on, which fortunately or unfortunately has become the rustic style of Indian politics. So in those two, with those two parameters, that is, invoking a legacy and, giving a sense of leadership, I think she scores very well. But yes, indeed, she is a case of too little, too late.
Thank you. Another question that we have, which says that, okay, this is probably, related more to US-India relations, but on foreign policy kind of areas. You would be, of course, aware of the 301 report, which came out just a few days ago regarding trade, possible sanctions or questions on IPR that the US and India have between them. The question which is asking is that there was not much reaction on this 301 issue amongst the candidate. Is it because this is an election which is, of course, about domestic issues, that is economy, corruption and such? Yes,
it's because, the election is more about domestic issues. The other thing which I think, a global audience needs to realize is that the bridge between the NRI community, the Indo-Americans, or for that matter, the entire Indian diaspora, and the Indian polity is the middle class which participates in a global economy. It participates in the Indo-American economy as well as plows back money here and participates in the Indian economy. That middle class yet lacks, however voluble and articulate it is, it yet lacks the critical mass, the momentum to be a key influencer within India. And that's the reason these issues do not come up in the campaign. But do not be surprised if 15 years hence, I'm just being very reasonable, if 15 years hence or 20 years hence, those issues do dominate Indian campaigns, because by the time India would have rapidly urbanized much more than today. So we can look forward to that change in the future.
That's a very interesting insight, sir. I think now we have a question which kind of dovetails or which links into your background as a cephalogist. And the guest is asking you to kind of estimate, what do you think? BJP is now talking about 300 plus seats. Is it hype or rhetoric, or do you see any substance to it?
Good question. Okay. I started observing elections in India almost when I was 21 years old. So 1996 is my first, was my first Lok Sabha election in India. I still remember vividly the cover story of The Week magazine. The Week magazine, is a very old edition in India. It's been out there since the mid-80s. So they had a cover story. I even remember the month. I don't remember the week, but I remember the month. It was April 1996. And it had a big graphic which said 215 for the BJP. And after that, the best tally the BJP got, as its own individual tally was 182. That tally came about 2 or 3 years later. So polls in India do have a tendency to overestimate the BJP and slightly underestimate the other smaller players, especially those that are more subaltern. So 300, in my honest opinion, no opinion poll has given that number so far. So it's fairly an overestimate for the NDA as a whole. But certainly the party is on its way to emerge as the single largest party, which is beyond doubt. So the real key question is, does it become the single largest party at 190 or at a 220 or 230? Because that can make a sea of difference to the stability and the policies of the government. So that really is the question.
Great, thank you. In fact, I think you kind of answered another question which was there, which was asking that how accurate is the polling industry in India? And I think while talking about this hype or this potential rhetoric and by BJP leaders about 300 seats, you already answered that. We have another question which is asking about, excuse me, the impact of the Aam Aadmi Party on these elections. How do you think, who are they hurting more and where are they possibly heading? Is it in single digits or could it be 20s or double digits or triple?
Thank you. If we actually look at the performance of the Aam Aadmi Party, one needs to understand what is the mobilization. How a certain victory is engineered. The Aam Aadmi Party phenomenon in Delhi was unique because it mobilized the voters at the lowermost strata. It mobilized those who live in slums. It mobilized those who pulled auto rickshaws. It mobilized those who sold, stuff on carts on the street. It picked up, to highlight corruption, it picked up something that hurt them the most, their electricity bill, their power bill. And then it started its mobilization from there. So it was a very, very rare phalanx of the intellectual class leading the lowermost class and creating a support base across the spectrum. And that is what made it, gave their base the power to actually completely destroy the Congress and even, become a potential threat to the BJP because it took support across the spectrum. Now, as the party spreads its wings across India, it does not have that sort of leverage amongst the lowermost strata. It doesn't have a brand recall, if I could use that term. It does have a brand recall. They know there is something called the symbol Jhadu. They do know that there is something called the Aam Aadmi Party. They do know that there was somebody in Delhi called Kejriwal who got the cops, to stop taking bribes. But in terms of the traction, the sort of, accommodation into the larger base which was built in Delhi is not there across the rest of India or across other metros. So what happens when the Aam Aadmi Party steps into those metros? It actually starts hurting the base of the BJP because that is the more mobile and internet-ready base. That's a base that is easy to reach out. This is one category of voters it has successfully reached out to. Now that doesn't mean all of them are again voting for the Aam Aadmi Party. Many of them were disillusioned with the 49-day experiment, and many of them still feel, okay, let's go with the winner. But nevertheless, this is one sort of section that the Aam Aadmi Party has reached out. The other section, interestingly, that the Aam Aadmi Party reaches out to, is look at its first victory. The first victory was Delhi. Now, Delhi is a microcosm of all the North Indian states that send migrants to Delhi to work. So, states like UP, Bihar, and more importantly, Delhi has a very closely integrated socio-economic fabric with the states of Haryana and Punjab. So the Aam Aadmi Party has actually managed to make a sizable impact in Haryana, Punjab, and Chandigarh, where it says, look, you've tried the BJP, you've tried the Congress, now you can try us. And because of the socio-economic ties, it's been able to get a traction there, which is more uniformly spread across the spectrum than the rest of India. So yes, the party is going to make an impact. It's going to be, besides Delhi, the party is going to be seen in Punjab, in Haryana, in Chandigarh. in a couple of other seats across the country where their candidates are significant, where they've picked up people of local presence or people of local significance. So it's going to make an impact there. In terms of seats, 10 to 15 would be a fair assessment for them. But in terms of the Aam Aadmi Party being a spoiler, I think it has great potential to play spoiler in Bangalore, in Indore, in Nagpur, in Pune, because everywhere there is this mobile internet-based new middle class ready to absorb their message. So I think one really needs to watch out for the class 2 metros. You can see this party making strides over there. We should see this party making strides over there on the 16th of May.
Thank you so much. I think that was a brilliant overview of the socio-economic basis of this party. Another question which has come in is that in the last few weeks, we have seen an increasing focus or rhetoric or arguments on polarization, so to say, between the secular and communal debate in India. Now, how much do you think that these loud discussions are going to impact the remaining phases, the remaining 2 phases of the elections, and whom they could benefit or harm, or is there a certain method to this process which some parties are indulging in, or maybe all of them?
I actually would like to, draw your attention to 2 interesting events which have happened in the past couple of days. First is, after the 3rd phase of polling, I have seen a sudden spurt in print reportage about the presence of non-BJP parties, namely the BSP, the RJD, and the Aam Aadmi Party. Now, these have suddenly started getting space in the print, which they had not got before. So maybe the first 3 phases, indicate that there has been some counter mobilization, which is a very real prospect. It does happen. In 1998, when the first NDA government was sworn in, there was a Atal Bihari Vajpayee wave across India. But in Maharashtra, the NDA was reduced to just 10 seats, which was largely because of counter mobilization. Now, counter mobilization requires 2 things. It requires an effective leader who can harness the counter mobilization sentiment into a group of consolidated votes. So Maharashtra had Sharad Pawar at that point of time. And I think that's why the coverage now, which speaks of counter mobilization, is focusing on the leaders. So they're talking of Lalu Prasad Yadav, they're talking of Mayawati, who have their pockets of influence where they can harness, the counter mobilization groups and, get them to vote en bloc. So counter mobilization is real, and the secular communal divide does seem to have influenced the turnout in many places. We have reports of turnouts in areas where people would want to not vote for Modi, and we have reports of increase in turnouts in areas where they would also want to vote for Modi. So the debate is real, counter mobilization is real, and you may want to watch out eventually for a reduction in the tally of the BJP due to counter mobilization, which may happen. So it's not that the party will lose its seat or will be routed, but that's a prospect that even the BJP is cognizant of. So yes, the debate is real, the consequences are real.
Thank you so much. We have, I think, quite a few questions backed up with me, but probably we'll take 2 quick questions with you and then move on to our second esteemed speaker, and then of course come back with you on the wrap up, and I hope we can answer or get you to answer some of those. These 2 questions which are coming in are, one is asking about Bihar. How is Bihar shaping up? It was supposed to be, going the BJP way, but it seems now that the RJD, the Lalu Yadav party, seem to be doing well compared to what was earlier anticipated. How much of this is where? What do you see in Bihar, please?
With Bihar, see, the real mystery factor about Bihar is that for the last 19 years, that is precisely after March 1995, there is no independent estimate of the BJP base. Because after that, the party has always contested as an alliance. So you do not know what is its own actual base. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the party does not have a base. The party actually has a very strong base. Earlier, in the early 90s, where it picked up a lot of seats in South Bihar. It picked up a lot of seats in the Champaran area of North Bihar. But after 1995, one does not have an independent assessment of what the party's base is. Now, given that, there is a conscious gravitation of all the castes that are not represented by a party. For example, RJD stands maybe for Yadav, Nitish Kumar stands maybe for some particular grouping of castes. So there has been a migration of these smaller castes towards the BJP, which is very evident in all the polls. What one doesn't know is that quantum sufficient to actually prevent a counter mobilization strategy from toppling the BJP's apple cart? And that is where the real challenge is. Now let's look at Lalu Prasad Yadav. In the last election that he lost, he and Ramvilas Paswan lost together, they yet polled 26% of the vote. Yeah. Now, and that was without the Congress. So now if there is strategic voting, and in strategic voting, there are possibilities that the vote shares in specific constituencies can go up to 38%, 40%, and you can emerge as a winner. And therefore, the threat of Lalu Prasad Yadav to the BJP is real. And therefore, one needs to estimate a little moderately the BJP's tally in Bihar. It might not be what opinion polls felt, it was going to be 4 months ago, something like 25-ish, 30. But it could be in the early 20s or just touching the 20s.
Great. Thank you so much. And one last quick question before we move on to Mr. Sumantra Sen. The question is pertaining to UP, of course, another heartland state, and the Bahujan Samaj Party, Mayawati. Is she going to be hold on to her base? Would there be some surprises? Because amongst all other parties, the BSP one, in fact, has been kind of quiet compared to, the other parties which are going out quite loudly. What is your assessment of BSP, please?
I think the BSP is one party that has always been underrepresented in polls. The other factor about the BSP is that, it's not a party that has wielded a lot of ability to convert its votes into seats unless it's really gone out of its way to cobble up a social coalition. So in the 2012 Vidhan Sabha elections, in spite of polling almost 36% of the vote, the party, it was 26.5, and the party yet won only 80 out of the 403 seats at stake. So its conversion factor is a real question mark. Yes, there are reports of some section of the more educated section of the Jatav, her core base moving away from the party. But over a period of time, the party has demonstrated an ability to hold on to at least 80% of them. So the real challenge here is for the BSP is, does the BJP penetrate the rural areas, and have a well-oiled machinery like hers? And as of now, it appears that she does seem to be holding on at least to most of her core supporters, and has even built bridges in the rural areas with the other communities that matter, or who could be the game changers. So that's a surprise we need to watch out for. I mean, I wouldn't write off the party, saying it's going to get 10 seats, 12 seats, it's going to wiped out. It's going to be wiped out. I think you watch out for the party. Her tally still could be upwards of 20, very conservatively.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Mrug. Now may I invite our second speaker of the day, Mr. Sumantra Sen, to lay out his opening remarks. Sumantra is an investment banker, worked earlier with the Bank of America. He is also the author of a book, Thirsty Nation, which talks about the water situation or water crisis in India, which is upcoming. He is also heading a think tank which focuses on responsible investments. So probably much more from an investment banking, investment perspectives. Sumantra, could we have your opening remarks on what do you see the government heading in, or the next government coming in? What can we expect, please?
Thank you, Ravinder. And good morning, good evening to everybody. I think Jay has already set the tone. It is, of course, one of the world's biggest democratic events that is currently on. And I guess the outcome is awaited not only by the Indian citizens, but also from across the world, including the investors. Overall, I think the polls have seen a a heavy voter turnout, which indicates general desire for change. The chaotic, tumultuous India that we know it as, has still been chugging along pretty nicely, not entirely perfectly, but I think chugging along nicely even, post GFC. But in the last 3 to 4 years, the signs of the things not working out really well have been known to everybody. So I think so the first is that, the decoupling did not work for too long, and because possibly decoupling didn't even exist in the first place. And second is that the unending list of internal issues, the policy paralysis on critical issues, series of scams, throughout the last 4 to 5 years, deteriorating infrastructure. I think all of that contributed to this, this slowdown, which is, a large part of it is very internal right now. The governance, crony capitalism, and related issues have been the underlying theme for the current elections, and have had a build-up of over 4 to 5 years, in which we've had series of conflicts in different parties. In fact, we've had emergence of party in this period, which build that as a central theme. Others like investment, growth, basic utilities did show up intermittently, off and on, but have gotten sort of pushed back in the current time in the deluge of points, counterpoints on religion, language, marital status. Of course, graft also remains as one of the issues. But now, of course, some of it was expected. That is the final phase, and some of it was expected. But it was possibly a great opportunity that that a platform where the political parties, the politicians, could discuss or talk about their mandate based on how well they have delivered public services or intend to deliver public services, rather than going into this vocab of identity and finger pointing on corruption issues. Nonetheless, I think FDI and portfolio investments will have to be at the top of the agenda for the new government. When I use the term new, I'm using it irrespective of which party or coalition comes in, although the markets have already probably made some assumptions and have rallied through in the last few weeks. While all that is great, the word of caution here is that beyond sentiments, I think it's the fundamentals that will play the central role in sustained growth.
Thank you so much. We have a question coming in. It relates to the BJP manifesto. The question is saying that Mr. Modi has talked about building 100 smart cities. Where is the money going to come from, and what are the sectors in which, how is the government looking to create these smart cities? Assuming, of course, they're not greenfield cities, but how is the government going to convert primarily? But the question is, where is the money or the investments going to come from?
So, Ravinder, I think let me go back a little bit and look at this whole great conundrum of infrastructure in India. Let's get to smart cities then. Basically, the infrastructure, basic essential infrastructure, is first of all created by public sector. Then I think it's passed on to the private sector at the right time, and then they collaborate and all that. But I think in India, the private sector was called to help in building and maintaining crucial public infrastructure sooner than I think most of the other development. So to answer your question, when we advance towards something like smart cities, I think the critical contributor here will again be private sector, which is not such a bad idea. It's actually a good idea. The private sector investment in Indian infrastructure could actually be a win-win for both the public and the private sector, which provides the capital as well as the expertise. So to answer your question, especially if we're talking about BJP, Mr. Modi, I think what we are looking at is a healthy partnership from the private sector, in not only smart cities, but in other critical areas of infrastructure.
Thank you so much. Another question for you, please, is that the GST, the Generalized System of Tariffs, I think, or taxes, implementation has not been smooth so far, and it's held up between the center-state relations in India. Do you see that the new government will be able to kind of work its way through and resolve, and we might see a common system within India on GST?
Govinder, I see that. In fact, I think that it is really on top of the agenda. It has recently come up in practically all the important discussions with various bodies which are working with the government, who are trying to put the idea, the list of the first things to do. I think GST is very high on the agenda, and I think whichever government comes in will be looking at it, resolving this GST matter. I think one of the first things when they come into office.
Thank you. I think amongst our earlier conversation, or even your mentions right now, we've talked about some kind of a policy paralysis, or at least a perception of a policy paralysis. For example, the case with Secretary Parekh with the coal ministry and the coal gate scam. It seems the bureaucracy has kind of stopped working or hit a pause button. How will the new government work with a bureaucracy that either may be on a pause mode, not wanting to take risks, or which could even be hostile to the new government? How would the new government work or resolve such?
Okay, I cannot really, Ravinder, recommend a very, clear-cut solution to that. All I can say is that, you're right that I think a lot of good initiatives have not made an impact, which were taken earlier, but were not probably able to make that kind of impact, because very little was done to prepare the stakeholder for the inevitable controversies or conflicts. I think that's where I think the partnership, more engagement from all the stakeholders will be required, in times to come. To some extent, I think a little bit of, an example that you gave of is the, Coal India, and we can certainly talk about the power sector. And one can look at as to how power, water, how these important issues, because they were not able to include certain stakeholders, they were not able to get things moving there. So my thought would be that first of all, a modern system on dealing with, let's say, how do you maintain critical issues like, let's say, infrastructure, oversight, etc., has to be built in. Responsibilities, accountability has to be built in, and I'm sure we will be able to track and manage bureaucracy in that manner.
Thank you so much. I think we have a question now which maybe kind of connects to one of your areas of expertise, which is water, and the book that you wrote, Thirsty Nation. The question is asking that what would you recommend for the new government to do in order to invite FDI, and if I may kind of fine-tune it, FDI into, let us say, the water sectors, supposing, because water is a key area, or overall FDI. What can the new government do? Some bold, big picture ideas.
Okay. So in general, Ravinder, if I look at the infrastructure investor, I mean, with or without the new government, you are aware that I think there are large pension funds, other institutional investors who are making investment in the sector, water included. But I think overall infrastructure, there is, significant investment coming in. But that is coming in with an apprehension that, they are hoping that there will be consistencies in the policy. I think that is one of the things. To answer your question, and specifically around water, if you look at the draft policy on water, there are certain good elements there which already give a nudge towards making it a private, making it a heavily privatized sector. So the nudge is already there. It is about, I think the first thing is transparency, no reversals on certain policy initiatives that are taken care of. Level of consistency is higher, and I think more important for water would be that, specifically for water, would be to look at what can the leaders do really in terms of going out of the way to prepare the electorate also for the inevitable controversies. See, basically, the citizens are gradually getting, they do understand that there is some level of, profit that is, expected when a private sector comes and invests in a sector like water. But you know, I think the whole topic has to be discussed better, and you know, I think the public sector plays here a larger role in terms of you know, working with the electorate and making that, you know, this is an outcome of a better service from the private sector. I think the pricing mechanism and how do you make it, you know, acceptable would be something which the new government has to do to, you know, attract and ensure the foreign or the domestic investors to that this sector would have, you know, would take care of their interests as well.
Thank you. I think we have another question which now again focuses on water. This is a two-part question. I'm sorry. The question talks about that some of us know about the Clean India campaign started by Image India and some colleagues in India. What do you think of cleaning of India's rivers? And secondly, Prime Minister Vajpayee had set up the interlinking of rivers project. Do you see that project coming to fruition now, or some momentum more on that interlinking of rivers and cleaning of rivers?
Cleaning of rivers, Ravinder, has, I think, you know, so I know that every now and then you hear about projects that, you know, looking at a specific part of a river, specific place, a harbor, a specific front. We've heard that, you know, especially in the last 4 to 5 years for several projects. I'm not sure about whether the whole project can be revived, etc. But what I think is that there are participants, both from you know, India and abroad, who are looking at this as a major, you know, what do you call, both from the water resource management standpoint as well as the kind of, you know, health hazard that these have become in certain parts of the country. It has become a very major issue. Given the right kind of approach, we can revive the same or maybe a similar project. You know, Image India participants can contribute, and I foresee that something on the key stretches of especially the North Indian rivers, we could look at. I'm sure there's something already being done in the Central India, has been done pretty well, you know, and so I've heard about one project in Gujarat. So I think that, you know, in case BJP comes into the sector, then I think the whole project can be revived, or any other party comes in. I think with the support from the international experts and the local bodies like Image India, I'm sure these projects can be again given some strength.
Thank you. I think another question which kind of addresses your investment banker hat or finance professional. The NPAs, the non-performing assets of banks in India, are a major concern even in the present. What are the steps do you think that the next government could take to mitigate a looming crisis, because that could have ripple effects right from the currency to various other aspects in India?
About the government, I'm not too sure. The financial sector itself, Ravinder, is already taking quite a few steps. As you know, that some of our largest banks and financial institutions, even in the recent past, have seen that number escalate, you know, dramatically in the last few years. You know, so what I hear is a couple of things. So one is that there is a sort of a focused attention on how the debt recovery would happen. The structure and the legal aspect of that is being discussed. I believe the recovery has become the first thing, where I hear that even some of the PSUs or large enterprises will also not be spared, and right kind of action will be taken. That's what I hear about this tightening of the recovery. Yes, and the other important aspect is that going from here, how do you, you know, how do you instill the right kind of mechanisms which give out the type of warnings on stressed assets in times to come? One interesting thought that we as a think tank are sharing with some of the financial organizations is that when you monitor your investment or lending, or even before you actually lend out, do look at the key extra financial factors also and keep on monitoring them, because somehow in a lot of times what is seen is that the critical you know, extra financial factors, do have an impact, a material impact on how a sort of an investee or a borrowing entity may be in a position to pay the loan. So I think that's something which is also being instilled into some of the financial organizations, and we are seeing that kind of buy-in coming from the major organizations now.
No, thank you. I think this leads to another question with you, which is asking that what are the kind of trends that you're seeing of investments coming into India from Europe, US, or Asia? What are the present trends? And if there is a Modi government, how do you see these trends changing or shaping up or morphing as the next government takes office? Which investors are more proactive with India, from which geographic region, from what backgrounds?
Okay, so I mean, if you look at the portfolio equity investment which is coming into India, we all know that it comes in from certain centers only. But see, from an FDI standpoint and from critical infrastructure standpoint, I think we are seeing a certain what we call improvement coming from the Asia neighbors itself. That has been a huge trend of late, which is very interesting. I'm not too sure as to how big can it be, but I think with Modi government in place or any new government which is a little open about it, I think China could be a very interesting trend for investments coming into India. That's something that we can look at it. The direct investor, I think the FDI, which I see it in key sectors, I think that's where European institutional investors, some from Canada in the recent times have been, I think, significantly large investors into the key sectors. That trend, I'm told, is going to continue from certain, key pension funds and institutional investment managers. So at this stage, I think what one can say is that with let's say the BJP government in place, Modi in place, I think we will see, I think, a huge change coming from Asia. The way I see it, I think the Asia would still become a very strong, potential for investment in the country.
No, thank you so much. That is indeed very interesting. And I think now we are probably heading to the last or concluding part of our conference call. Mr. Mrug, I hope you're still there with us. Hello, Mr. Mrug?
Yes, I am. Yes,
sure.
I'm there.
Would you have some, thank you so much. Would you have some concluding thoughts or some further insights as we've been talking through this past 45 minutes that you would like to share with our guests, please?
Yeah, I think, I would say, do expect surprises from the election. The Indian voters, have surprised the pollsters both in 2004 and 2009. So some surprises could be in store this time as well. Another factor, which we need to keep in mind, when we try and say, what sort of configuration the next government can have, is that there are many regional leaders, who actually have come out of the NDA, be it Nitish Kumar or Mamata Banerjee, or even Jayalalitha, who now have a parallel ambition, as far as their prime ministerial ambitions are concerned. And many of them see Narendra Modi as a contemporary, which is circumstantially different from the earlier NDA avatars, where Vajpayee was not seen by any of them like a contemporary. Rather, he was more a father figure to many of them. Now, there is Narendra Modi, who's seen as a contemporary by these leaders. So somewhere, if the numbers go upset, if these numbers don't come, we can expect a lot of hard bargaining, because it's not a father. It's not essentially a secular communal divide. I see that more as a red herring, to hide the real debate. The real debate is, do we see the prime ministerial candidate as a contemporary or as an old avuncular father figure, who under whose benevolent views we are willing to live. So I think that is where the real competition is. So if somewhere the numbers go upset, we can expect smaller players to bargain hard, maybe even try and live up to their ambitions. So that if there is going to be a surprise in this election, then this is perhaps the area where you're really going to get the surprise from. So that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mrug. I'll request you to please stay on, and Mr. Sumantra Sen, please stay on also. I will now hand over the discussion of the last lap to my colleague and the chairman of our US-India Political Action Committee, Mr. Sanjay Puri in DC. Sanjay, your concluding thoughts, some further questions, some more probes, all yours, sir.
Thank you, Ravinder. Thanks for a wonderful job in moderating. And thanks to our exceptional two panelists for two very different perspectives on politics, economy, water, infrastructure. I hope our listeners got as much as I did, and I'm sure a lot of us did. This takes a lot of effort to put together. We have a tremendous group of volunteers that do this every week, so I want to thank all of them. I had just two quick questions, perspectives, which I would really appreciate. Maybe just some quick thoughts from both of them. It's a great example of democracy, but these are long elections. We're talking almost like 2 months, and there's so much of an ebb and flow. And I understand there is a security issue and stretching of, the Border Security Force and CISF, all those things. But is there any way to shorten this? Because I think a lot can happen between 2 months in terms of elections. That would be question number one. And number two is something that was just alluded to in terms of father figure, etc. India is the youngest nation in the world. You've got 70% people below the age of 35. But when you look at the leadership in India, that's the perception that people have outside. When Mr. Vajpayee is slowly walking or Mr. Manmohan Singh is speaking slowly, it does not give an idea of a youthful nation. President Obama became president at the age of 48, even though the United States is an aging nation. So there is a little bit of, is it a cultural thing that Indians look towards age from, leadership? So that would be very helpful to the audience, especially in the United States and maybe around the world, for both of you.
Yeah. Sumantra, you want to start first? I'm open either way.
No, Jay, I think you go ahead. I think this is your domain. I guess I'll just chip in with my thoughts. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, let me take the second question first. One is we are talking of a demography that is increasingly having a younger demography. Yeah. And the leaders are, essentially, getting older and older, or at least, seem to be coming from the older side. I think the key is understanding, how our succession systems are built in India, as well as the structure of our democracy, and our political parties. They have a rigor. They first expect you to become an MLA, and then become an MP, well, I think the problem is somewhere deeper. We are a younger democracy, but that also means that we do not have our institutions as maturely developed as the West. Especially the United States of America, which is a very, very old democracy. When the institutions are very maturely developed, you have enough avenues, enough mechanisms to respect merit, to reward merit, to create, systematic succession channels, as well as to ensure a sort of democratic process within the party, which is not there in India right now. I mean, most parties do not even conduct internal elections democratically. They are more like consent-driven choices. They are not like, people came, voted, they had primaries. It's not that, which essentially means talent takes a while to emerge on the top. And that is what you are seeing right now. Talent is really taking a while to emerge on the top. So, it's like, if you have a more mature framework, then most companies, most parties function in a fashion where there's a process to bring up talent, and they are more like startups. Though they are huge leviathans, they are still like startups where talent can come up and be noticed faster. But if you go to a big company, which is a very established corporate house, and if those processes are not there, if it's not a really mature environment, then talent might perhaps never surface on the top, because the organizations themselves become top heavy. So which seems, unfortunately, the bane of Indian politics. That is the thing. Sanjay, can you please repeat your first question? I just lost track of it while I was answering the second one.
I was talking about the length of elections. I mean, I understand 800 million plus people with a vast country, security issues, but it seems like a long period where a lot can change. People say things can change in politics in a day or a week, but in 2 months, a lot can change and a lot can happen. Is there a way to, given EVMs and other things, is there a way using technology to shorten the process? Because also it is a pretty expensive exercise, because the attention of the country, I presume, is now completely being captured. Nothing else is happening for this 2-month period.
Yeah, I think there is a great scope to reduce the duration of the election. I remember when I was 15 years old, I witnessed the first general election in this country as a growing adult. That was in 1989 Bofors election, and we had the whole exercise wound up in 10 days. India voted on the 22nd, 24th, and 26th, and I think on 28th or 30th of November we counted votes and it was all over. I think the Election Commission is a fair bit concerned sometimes about violence or different sensitive areas like the Maoist infected areas, or areas where there are terrorist activities going on, and therefore carries out elections in a staggered schedule where it can concentrate the security forces in certain regions. That seems to be one of the driving factors, and the other is, of course, the resource mobilization to make it as precise a process as it can. I think those two impact the schedule of the election, but yes, given technology and I think given modern management techniques, there should be a possibility to reduce the duration of the election. I strongly endorse your view, Sanjay, that there should be a possibility to do that. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sanjay? Is Sanjay there, or has he dropped off, please?
Mr. Puri might have dropped off, gentlemen.
Yeah, please, John, all yours.
Yes, Ravinder, thank you very much, sir. With this last statement from Jay, we will be concluding this call. On behalf of USINPAC's Chairman, Sanjay Puri, co-founders Ravinder Sachdev, Vik Chauhan, Dr. Shruti Garg, and strategic advisors Ria Banerjee and Sue Ghosh, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's 2014 Election Series conference call. This now concludes our discussion. We hope you join us next weekend at 11 a.m. Eastern for another in our Election Expert Series. You will receive dial-in instructions automatically if you have already signed up previously. We look forward to continuing this conversation in the coming weeks, especially online, as we look forward to the U.S.-India relations and the road ahead. Please watch our USINPAC homepage and at usimpac.com and through our social media portals for more updates soon. Thank you again.